First of all, I'd like to welcome you all to this event. I think this is the fourth one that we've had at Canterbury Christ Church University. So it's the International Poetry Event, which has proved a great success. Because I think it's a very inclusive event, because people from every country in the university can access a poem in their first language, read it to everyone, and then possibly translate it into English, which is optional. I think it's also accessible because it doesn't matter how well you speak English. You can be absolutely brilliant, fluent, or you can just be starting to learn, and the event is still just as accessible to everyone. So I'd like to thank you all very much for coming on this grey, rainy evening, and I'd also like to thank a number of people, Zulfi Ali, who instigated this event at its origin and is always there to promote it and support it. But chiefly I'd like to thank Lipvi and Philip, who've been organising the event this year. So I'm just going to pass them over before I introduce Professor Helen James.
Once again, welcome everyone. So we're here to celebrate the diversity of our cultures and languages and all our differences. So I'm glad to see everyone here. So you're here with either a poem or just like here to enjoy the evening. So no pressure if you are not ready to share your poem, but if you have brought along something with you, feel free to come along. It's like a karaoke night. So yep, just grab the mic and enjoy yourself and share what you have got with the rest of us. All right, no pressure at all. All right, okay.
Philip's all right, but he's been really fantastic in helping organise this as well. I'd like now to introduce Professor Helen James, who's going to launch our event. Thank you very much.
Well, if I could just add my welcome to everybody. It's lovely to see everybody, staff and students and friends and colleagues. We are, as we've already been just hearing, it's about celebrating internationalism and the diversity at Christ Church University. I'd really love to launch the One World Week. So it's a whole week of different events with various bits of food dimensions. I notice on the programme we've got chocolate tasting tomorrow evening, which would be lovely. And then obviously different food from different cultures on Friday. There's film, there's also volunteering taking place in various communities. So there's a whole raft of activities. But the first one this evening, which I'm very pleased to launch, is actually the poetry, which you've already heard. And when Zulfi asked me to introduce, or at least welcome you all and launch the event, asking an engineer to read poetry is probably like asking an English graduate to solve a partial differential equation. And those of you who are into engineering or maths will know what I'm talking about. I don't generally do poetry, but actually talking to a number of colleagues around the room, they've said they've not read poetry for quite a number of years either, if I ever did read poetry. And also, what I should have done probably is actually, I'm from Cumbria. For those of you who are not familiar with my accent, it's probably not overly strong on Cumbria at the minute, but compared to the southern accent, it is. And probably what I should have done is think about a poem from Cumbria, although I probably wouldn't be able to say it, and you certainly wouldn't be able to understand it, because Cumbria, like Yorkshire, is pretty difficult to understand. Thank you to Zulfi and colleagues for organising this. When Zulfi asks you to do something, you generally can't say no, because he's so full of enthusiasm, and you know it would be a real success. So it's lovely to see you all. I am going to attempt to read a poem, if that's okay, if you'll indulge me. Please don't mark me out of 10. And I quite like the notion of it being a karaoke, because you get all sorts of people, don't you, coming up. So bear with me. Actually, this is an international poem. It's a Chinese poem which has been translated into English, and it's by a poet called Ya Mo, who actually is from the southeastern area of China and has been translated by Ming Di, and it was published in the Poetry International in 2019. So some of you maybe already know it. The reason I've chosen it is because there's a little dimension of science-ish, a little bit anyway, a bit of science and engineering in there. So it's called Homeland. Blue globe, a celestial body that slowly rotates. Human beings, the world, you, ourselves. The ancient legend is written on sheepskin, diary of a mankind in the old days. An ocean tide collides with an antique bottle, voices sealed inside. Prehistorical, AD, current century. The first infant wrapped up enjoys the true civilization first. Write into history what's past. Set up a beacon on what's coming next. What's left behind is an epic, a fairy tale and also a pyramid, wound of the earth. Ocean, land, no forbidding zones yet, but closing one eye is to lose half of the world. Unfortunate indeed, a human is always divided into two halves, one half facing the sun and one half facing the shade. Sun, Milky Way, galaxies beyond. Continents, a historical conception. Rockets are searching for other spaces. The world appears not big enough not to mention our little home. Walls, barbed wires, borders, border lines. Home, you are divided into several classes and poles. The long silent, snow-capped land, the permafrost zone. The desert that still has life, algae, mosses, lichens, poppies. Pick up an early blooming poppy for your friends, brothers, faraway neighbours. Thank you. So, how do we progress from here? Ellie, you're going to... Thank you.
Hello everybody, my name's Ellie from the Student Union. I will be hosting the International Food and Culture Fair on Friday in the lounge. So if you like food, come along, because who doesn't like food? And if you want to host a table, please email me, ellie@ccsu.co.uk, because I love people hosting tables, because I love to see loads of different food from loads of different cultures. So it's Friday, 1 till 3 in the lounge just next door. Thank you all for coming to this poetry evening. Last year, Zolfi asked me to read a poem very last minute, so I read something off my phone. This year I've come prepared. I brought a book and everything. This is a book from my daughter's bookshelf. She is 8 years old, and this is a book that's illustrated and written by Colin West. And Colin West is an illustrator who went to university with my daughter's grandma. So he actually did a little inscription inside the book to Ruby, and he drew a little picture of a fox on a bicycle, because his pictures are quite out there and a bit wacky. So his poetry is quite out there and a little bit wacky. So we've gone from lovely, serious, deep and meaningful message to a poem about a pirate. Are we ready? A pirate bold was Petta Pym, who was not a her because she was not a him. She was a her. She sailed upon the ocean blue, the captain of a crummy crew. A hint of danger and off they'd run, a coward, each and every one. One morning, Peppa Pym, she spied another ship, both tall and wide. It was that rascal, Toothless Tim, a fellow pirate, far from slim. Avast, me hearties, Petta cried, at which her crew began to run and hide. Though Petta Pym was not alone, she thought, I'm not one to mope and moan, or even to moan and mope, as she looked through her telescope. Tim, too, his telescope had took, so he might get a better look. Quite suddenly then, Toothless Tim exclaimed, Aha! It's Petta Pym! I never guessed, I never knew, my wildest dreams have all come true. I never knew, I never guessed, although in manly clothes you're dressed, you're not a him, but you're a her, the gender which I prefer. Likewise for Petter, toothless Tim appealed as much as she did to him. She muttered he'd be quite a catch, I think I've met my perfect match. They both threw down their telescopes and whooped and waved like lovesick dopes. Their crews were worried and perplexed and wondered what might happen next. Well, as their ships came side by side, "Please marry me," one of the captains cried, at which the other one answered yes. Quite who said what, I'll let you guess. In good old karaoke fashion, it's kind of anyone's game now. So if you're feeling brave, I wish I could rhyme and then say something that rhymes with brave. Do just throw up your hand or leap out of your chair and come and join us. Anyone? Yes, thank you, Matt.
Hello everybody. I think it's so interesting. I'll try